There's a pattern in the architecture of old cities that engineering textbooks don't explain. Buildings from the 1800s with metal spires reaching hundreds of feet into the air, structures covered in copper and brass fittings that serve no obvious modern purpose. Ornate metalwork running along roof lines, down facades, connecting structures in patterns that look intentional but have no function according to current architectural theory. The official story is decoration, aesthetic choices by architects who valued beauty over utility. But when you examine these features closely, when you map them across entire cities, when you consider what was removed during renovation projects in the early 1900s, a different possibility emerges. These weren't decorations, they were components of a power distribution system that operated without fuel, without combustion, without the infrastructure we're told is necessary for electrical generation. The standard narrative about electrical power is straightforward. Electricity was discovered in the 1700s, developed in the 1800s, and commercialized in the late 1800s by inventors like Edison and Tesla. Before that, cities had no electric power. Everything was gas lamps and candles. Then came power plants, fuel-burning generators, distribution grids, the modern electrical system. This timeline is taught in every physics class, appears in every history book. But the timeline has problems that become apparent when you examine what existed before the grid was installed. Cities built in the early 1800s, decades before Edison, had infrastructure that required electrical power to function. Street lighting systems with hundreds of lamps that operated simultaneously. Traffic signal systems that coordinated timing across intersections. Telegraph networks that transmitted messages instantly across continents. The official explanation is that these systems used different technologies. Streetlights were gas, traffic signals were mechanical, telegraphs used batteries. But this explanation requires believing that cities built elaborate infrastructure for gas lighting, then immediately replaced it with electrical lighting within a few years. That they built mechanical traffic systems, then electrified them almost instantly. That battery-powered telegraph systems could operate networks spanning thousands of miles without central power sources. Look at the buildings themselves. Structures from the 1820s and 30s in cities like New York, Philadelphia, London, Paris. Massive buildings constructed with dome structures on top. These domes weren't just architectural features. They were metal, usually copper, often covered in gold leaf. They reached hundreds of feet into the air. They had metal spires or rods extending even higher. The official explanation is that these were decorative cupolas. But decorative features don't require copper construction. They don't require gold plating. They don't require precise positioning at the highest points of structures. And they especially don't require the extensive metal infrastructure that connected these domes to the rest of the building. Examine photographs from the 1870s and 80s before major urban renovation projects began. You'll see networks of metalwork covering building exteriors, not decorative scrollwork, though that existed too. Functional metal infrastructure, copper strips running down the sides of buildings, metal rods connecting structures, elaborate antenna-like arrays on rooftops. All of this was removed during renovations in the late 1800s and early 1900s. The official reason given was modernization. Buildings were being updated, old decorative elements were being replaced. But why remove copper infrastructure during a period when copper was becoming valuable for electrical wiring? Why strip buildings of metal components just as the electrical grid was being installed and copper prices were rising? The timing is important. The major removal of this infrastructure happened between 1890 and 1920. This corresponds exactly to the period when electrical utilities were being established and power grids were being installed. Cities that have functioning lighting and power systems suddenly needed to dig up streets to install underground cables. They needed to build power plants on city outskirts. They needed to string overhead wires on wooden poles. All of this infrastructure was new. It was expensive. It required massive investment from utility companies and governments. And it was all supposedly necessary because cities had no electrical power before. But they did have power. The evidence exists in city records, in maintenance logs, in municipal budgets from before the grid. Cities had expenses for maintaining street lighting systems. They had workers whose job was servicing lamps. But these budgets don't include expenses for fuel. No coal purchases, no gas bills, no oil deliveries. The lighting systems were maintained, but they apparently operated without fuel. The standard explanation is that the fuel costs are hidden in different budget categories, or that records were lost. But this pattern appears across multiple cities, across different countries, across decades of municipal records. The absence of fuel costs isn't a record-keeping error. It's evidence that the lighting systems didn't require fuel. Consider how the old buildings were designed. The metal domes and spires weren't randomly placed. They aligned with specific geographic features. In coastal cities, the tallest structures with the most elaborate metalwork face the ocean. In river cities, the structures aligned with water. The pattern suggests the buildings were positioned to interact with their environment, to capture something from specific directions. What were they capturing? The official answer, when this question is asked at all, is that they were aligned for aesthetic reasons or to catch prevailing winds for ventilation. But ventilation doesn't require copper domes with gold plating. It doesn't require precise geographic orientation. The technology that made this system work was removed and then forgotten, but pieces of it survive in unexpected places. Examine old telegraph systems from the 1840s and 50s. These systems transmitted signals across vast distances using minimal power. The official explanation is batteries, small electrical sources at each station, but the power requirements for long-distance transmission are substantial. Modern engineers calculating the power needed for telegraph networks spanning thousands of miles conclude that battery technology of the 1800s couldn't have supplied sufficient power. The network shouldn't have worked based on known power sources, yet they functioned reliably for decades. The buildings themselves provided power. That's the explanation that fits the evidence. The metal infrastructure on building exteriors, the copper domes, the precise positioning, the alignment with geographic features, all of this was power harvesting technology. The buildings captured atmospheric electricity, the same electrical potential that creates lightning. They used the metal infrastructure to collect this electricity, to distribute it through buildings and across city networks. The system was passive, requiring no fuel because it harvested power that already existed in the atmosphere. This isn't speculation without scientific basis. Atmospheric electricity is real and measurable. The voltage difference between the ground and upper atmosphere is substantial, averaging 100 volts per meter of altitude. A building 300 feet tall sites in an electrical field with a potential difference of tens of thousands of volts. Modern science acknowledges this potential exists, but treats it as useless for power generation because tapping it is difficult with current technology. But what if the technology existed in the 1800s and was deliberately removed? The infrastructure for atmospheric power harvesting would look exactly like what we see in photographs of old cities. Metal collectors at high altitude, conductors running down to ground level, distribution networks spreading through buildings and across urban areas. The system would require no fuel. It would operate continuously as long as the atmospheric potential difference existed. And it would be completely independent of utility companies, governments, or any centralized control. Anyone with the right infrastructure could harvest power directly from the atmosphere. This creates an economic problem. If power can be harvested freely from the atmosphere, there's no way to monetize it. Utility companies can't charge for electricity that anyone can collect. Governments can't tax it or regulate it effectively. The entire economic model of power as a commodity breaks down. Free energy, even if it requires expensive infrastructure to harvest, undermines the profitability of power generation. This gives powerful interests a motive to suppress the technology. The removal happens systematically. Cities across the world during the same narrow time period stripped metal infrastructure from old buildings. The official explanations varied by location. Modernization in some cities, safety concerns in others, aesthetic updates in a few. But the result was the same everywhere. The removal of infrastructure that could potentially harvest atmospheric power, replaced with dependence on utility companies and centralized power generation. Look at what replaced the old infrastructure. Power grids that require fuel, that charge by consumption, that create dependence on suppliers. The economic model benefits utility companies immensely. Every watt of power consumed generates revenue. The more power people use, the more profit is made. This model only works if alternatives don't exist. If anyone could harvest atmospheric electricity using the right building design, the entire utility industry would be threatened. Remove the old infrastructure, convince people it was decorative, establish the grid as the only option, and you create a captive market. The grid itself reinforces dependence. Modern buildings aren't designed to harvest atmospheric power. They're designed to connect to utility grids. Building codes require grid connection. Permits for construction include provisions for utility hookups. The infrastructure of urban development assumes centralized power. Alternative systems aren't just discouraged, they're often prohibited by regulation. You can't legally disconnect from the grid in many jurisdictions, even if you have independent power sources. The system is designed to prevent alternatives. The historical record shows this happened intentionally. Utility companies in the late 1800s and early 1900s lobbied governments to establish exclusive service territories. They argued that electrical service was a natural monopoly, that competition was inefficient, that centralized control ensured better service. Governments agreed, granting utility companies monopolies in exchange for regulation. These monopolies made sense if electrical generation required expensive infrastructure that only large companies could build. But they make less sense if power could be harvested using building design, if the technology already existed in cities before utilities arrived. The documentation of the old power system was systematically destroyed or hidden. Engineering texts from before 1890 that described atmospheric power harvesting have disappeared from libraries. Patent records from the mid-1800s show gaps where technologies related to atmospheric electricity should. City planning documents from the early 1800s that might describe the purpose of building infrastructure are missing or heavily redacted in archives. The knowledge of how the system worked was deliberately erased. What survives are fragments, references in old journals to power systems that required no fuel, mentions in city council minutes of lighting maintenance that includes no fuel costs, photographs showing infrastructure that was later removed. Technical drawings in archives showing buildings with elaborate metal networks that official architectural histories don't explain. These fragments don't prove the complete picture, but they suggest something existed that the standard historical narrative doesn't account for. The buildings that retain their original infrastructure offer important clues. In cities where preservation protected old structures, you can still see the metalwork that once covered urban areas. These buildings often have unusual electrical properties, higher conductivity than modern structures, unusual electromagnetic fields around metal components. These properties don't serve any purpose in current use, but they're consistent with structures designed to interact with atmospheric electricity. Modern attempts to recreate atmospheric power harvesting face regulatory obstacles. Building codes prohibit the kind of metal infrastructure that old buildings had. Safety regulations require grounding systems that would discharge any collected atmospheric electricity into the earth. Electrical codes mandate connection to utility grids, even for buildings that might generate independent power. These regulations are justified on safety grounds, but they have the effect of preventing anyone from testing whether atmospheric power harvesting works. The complete suppression isn't necessary anymore. The removal of the old infrastructure, combined with a century of education teaching that electrical power requires fuel and centralized generation, has created a population that doesn't question the grid. The technology could be republished, the engineering principles could be openly discussed, and most people would dismiss it as impossible. The cultural belief that power requires fuel is now self-reinforcing. Even when evidence is presented, even when the old buildings are visible, the standard narrative is so deeply established that alternatives seem absurd. But the evidence remains in the cities themselves, in the buildings that survived renovation, in the photographs and documents that escaped destruction, in the patterns of infrastructure that make no sense as decoration, but perfect sense as power harvesting technology. The old cities had power systems that ran without fuel. They were dismantled, the knowledge was suppressed, and populations were sold dependence on a grid that requires continuous payment for something that was once harvested freely from the atmosphere. Understanding this history doesn't just change how we view the past, it changes what we believe is possible in the present.